Welcome to Bunnyfish Crafts. I'm your host Heather, known as Bunnyfish on Revelry, Instagram, and YouTube. Today is Monday, the 9th of March, 2015, and this is episode 119, Mend It March, part 2. It's morning. It's early. It's not like crazy early, but it's early for me. And yeah, apparently that's a problem. So this weekend we had really nice weather. I think yesterday got up around 60s. I don't know, it was definite t-shirt weather. And then this morning it was in 30s again. So I'm freezing, which is why I'm wearing my sock yarn blanket to podcast in. Isn't it pretty? I love this blanket. But I have a lot of things to try on, so you'll only see the sock yarn blanket for a little while. Anyway, how was your week? Was it fantastic? Mine was pretty good. Except that Gabriel got sick. We had 2 snow days last week, so that was nice because one of the snow days was one of the days he was sick, and I would rather him miss school for a snow day than a sick day because they're at the point where they have to make up snow days now. So it's not like he's missing school content by having a snow day. It was just, yeah, it was awful. And he's still not 100%. You know how it is when you get like a stomach thing and like after the stomach bug is gone, your stomach is still weird for like a week. He's in the weird part right now. Anyway, knitting stuff. Steampunk Knit Along. It ends at the end of this month, and it could be a work in progress or a new project. There's still plenty of time to finish something for the knit along. I finished my project for the knit along, and let's see, which way is the front? This way is the front. This is my cog in the machine. It's a pattern designed by me. I have not woven in ends yet. That still has to happen. So this is designed by me. The yarn is Marigold Jen. The main portion is using her 75-25 or 80-20 sock base, I can't remember, merino nylon. And then the edging, excuse me, it uses the merino nylon stellina base. So that's what the edging looks like. This is the texture, which I love. I love this so much. I love the shawl so much. I was to that part of the edging last week, and I did all that edging and then blocked it. And sits like this. It sits like that, comes down. You could block it more aggressively. I did not block mine aggressively, but you could block it more aggressively for length, or in section 3, which is this fun texture cable section, you could add more repeats there if you had enough yarn for it. This this pattern used about, I want to say 90 grams of the main color. So if you had an extra long skein or 2 skeins, that would work, but it has plenty of stretch to it, so it could be blocked more aggressively and look fine. So yeah, this is mine, and I like it a lot. And you could wear it this way too, like a kerchief, and it looks fine and fancy. So you wear it either way and it looks fine, I think. I really like this. I love this colorway so much. Marigold Jen, she is also a brilliant. My dyer fronts are brilliant. They just are. So I hope you're doing excellent with your projects too, because I'm super happy with mine. And I used the US 4 3.5 millimeter needle as was called for in the pattern because it's my pattern, so I didn't have to change that. And I think it is super lovely. Oh, so I used basically a full skein of yarn for the main color, but only a half skein of the of the edging color. So actually a little bit less than a half skein of the edging color. So if you wanted, like if you were just going to do it in one color and you used 2 skeins of yarn, that would be plenty to add in another repeat if you wanted this to be longer. But I like this because it's perfect, like kerchief size. Let's make sure you can see that. Perfect kerchief size, and it also covers my back because I'm on the smaller side. Now I kind of want to cast on another steampunk thing. I don't have anything in mind. I just kind of want to cast something on. Maybe I just need to tell myself that something else is steampunk related and work on that extra hard this month. I don't know. That's my only finished object this week, but it is a lovely finished object. I'm super excited that it's finished. Yeah, I didn't realize how much I liked it until I just put it on, and now I'm like, this is awesome. Like, I knew I liked it, but I really, really like it now. That's so strange because I made it, but I haven't had a sample of my own just sitting around because I designed the pattern, and the piece that I made when I wrote the pattern is what I sent off to Marigold Jen to use as a shop sample because she supplied me with yarn to make too. So I haven't had my own sample sitting around and I haven't been able to wear it. Now I'm excited to be able to wear it because I really like it. That's really cute. Sorry, distracted. Okay, what I am working on. My sweater still has progress. I think it's about doubled in length this week. It's where I was. This stitch marker right here. It's where I was. And I also did the sleeves. I did end up doing what I said that I would probably do, which is I worked from the outside of one of the balls that was attached to finish off the sleeves because you use where you left off, where you split, and you just put a few rounds of ribbing on, which I hope will, I hope those will calm down once I block it because it's curling a little bit right now and I don't love that. But it'll probably block out, right? That's what blocking is for, to make things lay nicely. So the sweater, I don't have it on long enough needles to spread it out across my torso, but this is how far we are. I've started for the hip decreases. And it's cute. Oh my gosh, I love this sweater so much. I haven't actually looked at it when I tried it on. I've tried it on a couple times to make sure that the increases and decreases and all that were in the right spots. Oh my gosh, this sweater is so cute. I love it. This yarn is amazing. It is from 716 Knit. It is a custom dye on the Chrono Worsted, and it is a modified hamsters. I love that colorway so much. What's it called? Everyone wants petrified hamsters, then they never know what to do with them. Something like that. I love that colorway so much. And now I'm going to have a sweater, a short sleeve sweater, but I'm thinking of making it longer than the pattern calls for because I have several sweaters that end about hip length, like top of hips, but I kind of want something longer. More like a comfy over anything type sweater. I made some more progress on my spinning. That's how fine it's spinning out. I'm finding that the darker fiber in these does not want to as easily spin thin. It does fine, but it has more, you can see how it's got this slub right here by my pinky. It's got more slubby parts, which is fine. Tan's fun, I don't mind. It's just what I'm finding. This is the Tom Riddle's Diary. No, this is the Hufflepuff's cup. Tom Riddle is the last one. This is Hufflepuff's cup. It's part of the Gourmet Stash Halloween Unclub from last year, the Horcruxes. And I'm loving the spin on that. It's just taking a long time because I'm spinning it super thin. I don't think that I applied more than I showed you last week. Maybe, but if I did, it's not enough to warrant a showing. I also worked on the Suggestive Message socks, which is a pattern by Mara. Mara what? What is her last name? Marzaki, using Knit Pick Stroll Tonal in Canopy, and Fleece Artist BFL, no colorway name. And Toes and Heels are in Knit Pick Stroll hand painted in the Make Believe colorway. Not a ton of progress, just a little bit. So that's where I was last week. This is where I am. I'm almost through the chart on this first sock though. So hopefully I will be able to finish it, the chart part, this week, and then move on to the cuff immediately after. Actually, if I want to finish these socks by the end of the month, I should probably strive to finish the first one this week. But I don't know how realistic that is. I don't know. I just, the pattern's fine. I'm just not loving it. Because I still can't, can you see the message? It's supposed to say something, and I don't really see it. I see that it's supposed to do something, but I don't see the message. Maybe you can. Let me know if you can, because that would make me feel so much better, and it would make me so much more excited about this project. I definitely need to give illusion knitting a try after this, but I don't know. It's difficult when I want it to be working and I don't think that it's working. I also can't try it on because I'm using 9-inch circulars, and my hand can't even go into this without knocking off stitches, so no way is my foot going in. And I feel like there's something else I want to say about these. I don't know. If I remember, I'll tell you. Oh, I didn't tell you anything about the pattern that I'm using for my sweater, so let's rewind to this. This is the Sarah sweater by Laura Ayler. And I'm now to the really easy stockinette zombie portion where it's just a few increases, but it's not a bajillion different increases at different rates like it was for the top. So I've made it through the top successfully. Now I'm on the easy part. And then I will, what's left is the knitting down for the body, doing the ribbing on the bottom, and then picking up for a shawl color. I'm pretty pleased with how the sweater is coming. And Amanda's socks will be beautiful when they're finished, even if you can't see the message. What else have I worked on? So those were my 3 works in progress from last week. And then I have 2 new projects this week. I started a scarf using Regia lace, but I'm not knitting a lace scarf. And I am not even using the lace yarn as lace. I was going to, and then I was going to hold it double because the lace was too skinny. So I'm making a scarf for my brother-in-law, Steve's sister's husband. Making a scarf for him, that's what he wanted. I've only met him a couple times, so I don't really know what he likes. Steve picked out the yarn based on the color, and it was lace, and I was like, I don't know about a lace weight scarf for a guy, so I swatched it. Steve picked out the pattern for the scarf because I was like, I don't know what guys like. I just knit what I like, and then people deal with it, right? But he's the guy in question is in the military, and he's very like rugged kind of. Plus they live in Texas, so what's he gonna do with a scarf anyway? I don't know, but that's what he wanted. So Steve picked out the pattern, which is the ABABA by Angela. Oh no, I can't even pronounce this. It should be at the bottom of the screen right now. Yeah, I can't even pretend to pronounce that. And this is what it looks like. It's a free pattern, so I don't mind telling you that what it is you have row A and row B, and you do row A, then B, then A, then B, then A. And then you start over again with A, which is what gives it these ripples. And when this blocks out, it will not be so skinny. You can see it's like basically the width of my palm. When it blocks out, it will look more like this because I'm going to block it. I'm not going to leave it as it is, which I think you could, but I'm going to block it because I think it also looks cool like that. And it will give it a little more length and width that way. I cast on 40% less stitches because this calls for fingering weight yarn. And I'm not using a lace weight, and I'm not even using a lace weight held double. I'm using 3 strands of this lace weight held together. So it's kind of like a DK worsted weight right now. And I'm using US size 6 needles, which is 4.0 millimeter to make this scarf. It's a really, really ridiculously easy pattern, like knitting while reading easy pattern, which is what I've been doing. And backtracking. So I was going to hold the yarn double to make it just a little bit thicker than the lace, but that would mean pulling from the inside and outside of the ball. And as you can see, this yarn has long color changes, and I didn't think about that. And I started knitting with the yarn from the inside and the outside of the ball, and I was like, oh, this is very mottled. This is not what I want this scarf to look like. It was fine. He probably wouldn't even noticed, but I knew that that's not what I wanted. And I was in a VKN with Josh when I was going through all of this, and he was like, well, why don't you just hold it with 3 strands? And I was like, oh, brilliant. This is why I keep you around. So the way that I'm doing that is I have the yarn caked up, and I started with a normal slip knot, as you do, and then I did a slip knot again, making that 3 strands. And when I get to the end of a loop, so you have a loop, when I get to the end of the loop, I grab the yarn through and make a new loop and pull it basically arm length. That's enough of the 3-ply for me to get a row and a half, basically. I mean, I could have done all of that at the beginning, like rewound it into a 3-ply yarn and not had to fuss with it, but then that just seems like a lot of prep work when I could just do it 1 strand at a time as I'm going, which is good because it gives my hands a rest when I'm knitting. This is how far it is. He wants it to be able to wrap around once and hit his waist, so I have plenty of yarn to make that, I think. We'll see. We'll see if I end up playing yarn chicken, because, you know, I'm modifying this pattern a lot from what it's supposed to be. Different yarn weight. I'm modifying the yarn by using it as 3 strands instead of 1 strand, so that affects the yardage a lot. We'll see how it goes. I'm liking it so far. I hope that he'll like it too. Steve says that it's a good guy knit, which I have to trust him because he's a guy. And, you know, even though he doesn't know his brother-in-law very much, because they live really far away, and Steve's only met the guy as many times as I've met the guy. I think they've talked on Facebook a little bit, but, you know, he doesn't know him a lot. I just have to trust that Steve knows what a guy would like. The other thing that I cast on is a pair of socks, and I have not started the pattern portion yet. I just did the toes. So here's toes. I will tell you all about the pattern next week when you can actually see it, but that is this way. That's the toe. The yarn that I'm using is Science Monkey. Is it Science Monkey Mercantile or Science Monkey Fibers? I can't remember. In the Jovian Princess colorway. Oh, it's so pretty. This is a skein of yarn that I won from Nerd Wars. I don't remember what exactly I won for, but it is a custom colorway based on Sailor Jupiter. It's so pretty. It's the Faraday sock, which is a 75-25 blend, I believe. I just love it so much. I'm excited to knit up these socks and excited to show you what it looks like knit up because, oh my gosh, that colorway is so beautiful. So beautiful. I love it. That was a lot of knitting that I started this week. It was a lot of knitting progress this week. I'm proud of myself. And I also made a barn raising square. So this is number 13. It is made using some yarn from Haley. I don't know what the yarn is, but it's kind of pretty. And it's very different from everything else in my blanket because I don't know if you've noticed, but I use a lot of green and gray and purple, especially recently. So this is just so different. And I love the way that it looks with all of the other squares. Oh, sock yarn blanket update, the barn raising square blanket update rather. I have decided that I will not be using the actual swatches from Sweaters and Things. I will just take out that yarn and use it and make squares for my blanket, but not use them in the square thing. Because I laid out the squares for Steve and he looked at it and he was like, I think that the just plain squares look very, very strange. I was like, okay. So you'll be seeing that finished. I'll talk about it more when it happens. I feel like I'm not explaining well what I mean. So I'll show you more when it happens. I have a couple new things this week, which are very, very exciting. The first is a pack of buttons. So I bought this pack of buttons because I wanted to fix this hat. I'll talk about it more in a minute, but specifically because it had these buttons in them. The packaging is not conducive to having a 4-year-old raid your stuff, so I ended up putting the rest of the buttons in this glass jar. But I specifically liked the style. And it's a green and brown mix, which I figured was fine. Joann had a sale on their buttons this past week. I don't know when it stops or if it's already stopped or whatever, but they had a button sale, 40% off all of their buttons. So I was like, well, I always use green and brown buttons all the time. Those are probably the two most used buttons in my house. So yeah, I'll get a largish pack, and it was inexpensive. I mean, you can see the price on it. $7, but 40% off. It was pretty inexpensive for, I don't know, 50 buttons. I am super excited that I bought those. And then I have another new thing. I'll talk more about the buttons after I finish new things. I've already said that, didn't I? I don't know. It's early. The other thing is some yarn. Steve bought it for me. This is from Nooch, and you know I love Nooch fiber. I think it would have to be, I think if anyone asked me which yarn, what sock yarn, if I could only get one indie dyed sock yarn for the rest of ever, I would have such a hard time choosing between 716 and Nooch because I love both of them so much for different reasons, obviously. 716 is very speckled and has great stripes, but Nooch just has these beautiful color blend, variegated yarns and some tonals, and I just look at those colors. Oh, and Nooch, oh, I didn't even see until right this second. So there's this really bright pop of blue in here. I noticed the yellows and the orangey bronze color and the green, but I did not see that blue, and now I love this skein of yarn even more. Oh my gosh, I love that blue. There you go. That's so pretty. All of the skeins that she does, Mariana is the main dyer. It's Mariana and Nick. But all of the skeins that they do are one-offs. You can order, you can custom request orders for larger amounts of yarn if you wanted to make a larger project using like one colorway in one dye lot, but everything's a one-off. So they would work with you, but you know, I would do that if I wanted something, but it's a hand dye. So, you know, do you know what I'm trying to say? If you've worked with hand dyes, you know what I'm trying to say. And if you haven't, work with some indie dyed yarn and you'll get it. This colorway is Rebalanced, and this is the Morningside sock, which is 100% superwash merino wool. So I don't know what this is going to be. I don't even know if it will be for me because I feel like it needs to be, well, it doesn't have any nylon in it, which I don't really care about for socks, but I feel like this would make a really pretty hat or cowl. So I don't know if it'll be for me because I don't know about that yellow right up by my face. I feel like that's a iffy thing, but it's really, really pretty. It would be gorgeous on someone else. So I don't know. So pretty. I could squish on this forever, but I'm not going to. What I am reading, nothing currently because I finished 2 books this week. Reached by Ali Condi. It was okay. I really, really liked the first 2, and this one, I don't know, I just felt like it wasn't a good resolution to the story. The tone was just very, very different. I don't know. I didn't love it. It's difficult though when you're, I find that for a lot of trilogies that are coming out, which if you've noticed, dystopian books have been coming out in trilogies a lot. I find that the last book has been lacking in most of the ones that I've read. They're just not satisfying. I don't love the ending. But I would recommend the trilogy to anybody with the understanding that the ending is not amazing. I also finished The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen somebody. I liked it, but I didn't love it. I know a lot of people have loved it. I don't know. Maybe I'm just not in the right frame of mind for it right now. It was good. It was good enough that I'm going to watch the movie. And I would recommend it to high school students. I think it would be good for them to read. I think I'm just not in I'm not in that mind frame right now. Maybe I need to read an actual grown-up book instead of a young adult book. I don't know if that'll happen, but maybe that's where I'm at right now in my reading. It's basically the story of Charlie's first year of high school, his freshman year. He's older than he's older than everybody in his grade because he was held back a year. And he doesn't even hang out with anybody from his grade. He hangs out with a bunch of seniors. So you get to see that dynamic of someone younger hanging out with older people and what that leads to. I don't know. It's pretty good. It's just not great. My opinion. Other people think it's super great. A lot of people read it in a day because they loved it so much. It's just not my favorite. On to mending. I'm actually really excited to show you what I mended this week. I'm so excited that I even like prepped and took before photos so that I could show you what things looked like before. So I'm going to start with the object that I'm wearing, which is the string band by Stephen West. And this is what it looked like before I fixed it. Cracked buttons, missing buttons. It was just not so good. So I bought those buttons because I really liked how bright they were. And I love the way that they look when they're attached, because you sew around a bar, so it's got that yarn, which is not yarn from the hat. It's a different yarn. It is the Premier Serenity yarn, dark sage or something. I just made a blanket square with it. But I thought it matched fine enough, and I like the buttons with the hat. So that is my first mended thing. So now it has the appropriate amount of buttons, and they're in the right place, and they work with the hat. They're not too heavy, which is another concern that I had, was weight, because if they're too heavy, then they would like pull this down and out of shape and all sorts of things. And I really like the buttons. I think it was a good choice. I think they're showing up a lot more orange than they actually are. Like, they're definitely an orangey brown, but they're not quite that orange from back. I think that's closer to color. I think from back there they look super, super orange, but they're definitely a brownie color. So it's my hat. I also bought buttons. I bought a lot of things when I went to Joann's. I bought some buttons, lots of buttons, and I bought a zipper, which I'll talk about in a minute. So I removed the buttons from this hat, and then I had a cowl that, this is where the weight thing comes in. It had these beautiful, beautiful buttons. They are square, but they're metal, and they are quite weighty. The problem was it dragged that part of the cowl, which is buttoned. The buttons dragged it down. I took the cowl and the hat to Joann's because I knew that I wanted buttons to fix both, because I wasn't wearing the cowl because it didn't keep my neck warm because it scrunched down around those buttons. And the cowl is pretty, so it's a fine accessory, but it's been cold, so I've needed something that would actually keep me warm instead of just looking pretty. Well, as I was at Joann's, I realized that the buttons from this hat looked nice with the yarn from this cowl. So I decided I would just use these wooden buttons on this cowl, which works perfectly because they're not weighty. They add a little bit of visual interest without being too distracting from the cowl. I think that they're really complementary because the cowl has some green and the buttons have some green naturally in the wood. The buttons also have some purple. So I didn't end up buying buttons for this cowl like I thought I was going to. I just repurposed the button. And so now I can wear it because, as you can see, this doesn't bunch down over here. It stays up nice against my neck, keeps me warm. And I don't know what pattern this cowl is because I did not make it. It is a cowl that I received in the first swap that I ever did on Ravelry. And I wore it a lot when I first got it because it was the only cowl, shawl, scarfy thing that I owned. But then as I started making things, I stopped wearing it so much because of that issue. I really like, in the wintertime, I really like cowls to be right up against my neck to keep off the wind. Because I walk, I park really far back in the parking lot for work because we're supposed to, which means I have a long walk to and from my vehicle. And I can walk around just fine in a t-shirt and, a work shirt and my pants in the wintertime, as long as I have appropriate accessories. So mitts, hat, cowl, scarf, shawl sort of thing. As long as these parts are warm, I'm fine, but I can be bundled up in a really heavy coat and be freezing if my neck gets cold or my head. So having a cowl that fits properly was important. Another thing that I fixed, I have basically added 2 sweaters to, well, not sweaters so much as like upper body garments, to my wardrobe because I fixed 2 things this week. The first is something that I bought more buttons for. I don't know if you would recognize this coat because it's been a really long time. I'm sure that I wore it on the podcast in the first several months. I know that I wore it to the first ZK and then I lost some buttons for it. And this coat has a lot of buttons, but I think it was even missing a button when I wore it to the first ZK, but I didn't really care because it was only 1 button and I was like, it'll be fine. But then I lost 2 more buttons and this has 14 buttons. So 3 buttons out of 14 is kind of a lot, especially where the placement was. This is, I replaced all 14 buttons. And now I can wear my jacket, which is good because I love this little jacket in the spring and the fall. So here's the jacket. It's got, all of the buttons are functioning. So these are functioning and all these pockets are functioning. This front, these, I don't know why you would unbutton the epaulets, but they do. The only 2 that are not functioning are these 2 back here. Those are purely decorative. So I had to make sure that all the buttons were in the appropriate places for functioning, which is fine. Because what I did for all 3 of these projects is I left, when I cut off the button, I left the thread or yarn in place so that I wouldn't have to figure out appropriate button placement on anything. I could just go with it. And I highly recommend that, leaving the yarn in place, especially if you're removing a bunch of buttons all at once, like if you're removing all 4 buttons on a cowl before you start putting them on. It's not such a big deal if you're like cutting one off and then putting one on immediately, but if you're cutting them all off at once, leave the yarn or the string or whatever there until you actually put the needle in with the new yarn so that you know where you're going, so you don't have to refigure it all out. The other thing that I fixed is the sweater from the sweater that I made for Amanda. I pulled out the zipper and I did buy a new zipper, a shorter one, but I decided that I didn't really think it needed a zipper. I felt like it would be better as kind of an open front cardigan. I did think it could use a closure though, so I used a button right here, which I will show you in a moment. Yeah, so that's the fixed sweater. So what I did was, instead of putting in a new zipper, I sewed on a button on one side. So this is one of the square buttons that was on this cowl because I didn't want to go back to Joann's to find a button. So I was looking around and I was like, oh, that's perfect. It's muted like the sweater, but it's still interesting like the sweater. And then what I did was, on the other side, right on the edge, I made a button loop. I just took some of the yarn that I had ripped out from the zipper attachment and made a chain and then went back, slip stitched into the back loop of the chain to make this buttonhole. So yay, 2 spring type sweater things, garments. And I still have a few things in my bag of mending, which I will show you next week. But I'm really pleased with all of the things that I made functional this week. Oh, there's one more thing. It's not really mended, but I blocked that hat. This is the Melusine that I knit out of the Spartacus Dyes Scandalous colorway. And it's actually still on the plate that I blocked because I wanted to show you how I blocked it. So this is a beret type hat. It's going to be slouchy, and I blocked it on a dinner plate. But a problem that can happen is that your ribbing can get stretched out if you just set it on there. So what I did was around the top portion of the ribbing, I threaded this cotton thread through and then pulled that tight so the ribbing wasn't being stretched at all, only the hat was. So, you can see the thread coming through. So the ribbing, you can see, is still quite tight to itself. It's not stretched out. And this is what the hat looks like now. I think it was nice before, but I think it looks a lot nicer now that it's blocked out. Oh, it's so cute. I kind of want this hat. But it's not for me. It's a Christmas present. And I'm pleased with it. And I'm even pleased with the crown, even though I had to make that work because I played Yarn Chicken and lost. Well, I hope you made something fantastic with your sticks and string, and I will see you next week. Bye!